Sensational. Russian bunkers have been breached. Top-level facilities of the Russian elite have been blown up. What was once considered untouchable, for many years now it's just a target for deadly strikes by the Ukrainian armed forces. All of Russia is in an uproar. Kupyansk, our forces did it. An entire Russian army was incinerated. The cauldron of war has reached its limit. A sudden counterattack by the Ukrainian armed forces has turned the front upside down, and the kill zone created by the Ukrainian forces has buried all of the Kremlin's plans. Shock. An aerial battle near the presidential aircraft. Zelensky is in danger. Details have surfaced that astonish the whole world. Who is behind this? Lukashenko's bloody secret. Belarus has been exposed. They tried hard to hide it in Minsk, but the truth is already spreading online. All this and more in our upcoming report. Hotspot. Sensation. Apocalypse in the heart of the Russian regime. Ukrainian drones have penetrated even the most secure bunkers. The Kremlin elite. The enemy is in panic. Top sites, considered untouchable for decades, have come under attack right in the heart of the regime. What exactly was destroyed in the SU, and how will this affect the power in Moscow? Don't miss the sensational details.
In recent months, Chechnya has become the epicenter of tension amid increased intensity of attacks by Ukrainian drones. Airports in the North Caucasus suspended operations. A UAV strike was recorded near the skyscraper in Grozny city on Kadyrov Avenue. One of the high-rises was damaged. The video shows that at least 10 floors were affected. A day before that, Kadyrov declared that he was ready to go to war with Europe at any moment and promised to force it to apologize.
We definitely won't stand on ceremony, Vladimir Vladimirovich. We're waiting for the order. Everything will end very quickly and clearly not in favor of those who decided to start a war with Russia. I have just one question. Vladimir Vladimirovich, if all this starts, you won't be upset with us if they immediately start apologizing voluntarily, will you?
Notably, the high-rise district is located just 800 meters from Kadyrov's residence. His administration was seriously frightened because Don might not have survived this blow, given his serious health problems.
Grozny and the prominent Grozny city complex are prominent symbols of the current Kadyrov regime and, as I understand it, the primary singular achievement of the Kadyrov regime.
Several government offices of Chechnya are located in the affected buildings of Grozny city.
In particular, according to mapping services, the building houses the Chechen Ministry of Tourism, the Regional Department for Relations with Religious and Public Organizations, the Regional Office of the Ministry of Justice, the Chechen Security Council, the Republic's Audit Chamber, the Local Ombudsman's Reception Office, the United Russia Party's Reception Office, and the Regional Election Commission.
The main target of the attack may have been the FSB building, which is located nearby, but Russian electronic warfare made its own adjustments.
This is not a strike against the civilian population. This is a strike against government bodies, absolutely legitimate, absolutely lawful.
This is already the second strike on the region in a week. Earlier, UAVs hit FSB buildings in Ochkechu and Martin, as well as the district police department in Gudurmes. Chechnya has not been subjected to attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces since December of last year. At that time, the barracks of the Russian National Guard came under attack.
These are merely strikes against local Chechen security and military forces, and they often act as a force to coerce Russians themselves into fighting. And in order to significantly distract them, we strike at them.
Ukrainian defenders continue to fight the occupiers, destroying their weapons behind enemy lines. This time, as preparations were underway to launch Shaheds from Milerovo in the Rostov region, several Ukrainian drones struck the UAV launch platforms.
This was one of 6 locations from which the Shaheds were being launched. Milerovo remains a major hub, a large base for storing Shaheds and launching strikes. Now, these sites have become permanent installations from which up to 100 Shaheds can be launched in a single night. That's a lot.
Milerovo is an important road and rail junction. From Milerovo to the line of contact is more than 150 kilometers. From here, Russia launches Shaheds at Ukraine almost every night. The moon will be there.
Oh my goodness, look, something pure white is beautifully flying quickly and gracefully. Oh dear mama.
After successful attacks by Ukrainian defenders on Russian airfields, this year, new air defense positions appeared at the Milerovo air base, which were not there in 2024. They were building on the site of open aircraft parking areas. Hangars.
Naturally, we pay special attention to this facility, which is a major base for Shaheds. These Shaheds have now, unfortunately, become one of the three primary and most significant means of striking against us. These are Shaheds, guided bombs, and ballistic missiles. These three components, if we learn how to fight and counter them, life will become much better for us.
Foreign agencies are reporting a record intensity of drone attacks on Russian regions. In November, the number of drones launched from Ukraine increased. This is also confirmed by official data from the Russian Ministry of Defense. Ukraine, meanwhile, continues its fight against the occupiers. In
an urgent operation, the Ukrainian armed forces closed the cauldron of revenge near Kupyansk. Our forces completely disrupted Putin's plans. The deadly kill zone turned an entire Russian army to ashes. There is no way out. Kremlin propaganda burst before the eyes of the whole world, while generals in Moscow are tearing their hair out in hysteria. All the shocking and sensational details from the front line are in the report.
The defense forces have turned the tide near Kupyansk. They pushed the Russian occupation army back to the northern outskirts of the city and created a kill zone around the settlement. This was stated by Viktor Trehubov, head of the Communications Directorate of the Joint Forces Group. Despite Putin's tales about his army capturing Kupyansk, the situation for the Russians on this front is only getting worse. Thanks to the work of our drones, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to completely cut off the enemy's supply routes there.
These are exactly the sections of the front where in reality a person physically cannot be present because they are controlled by drones from both sides. These effective and well-executed tactics allow Ukraine's brave defense forces to continue their crucial defensive operation in the strategically important city of Pokrovsk, as well as in Mirnohrad and various other significant settlements within the region.
Meanwhile, the situation in Pokrovsk remains difficult for now. The occupiers are trying to break through the defenses and outflank the city. However, the defense forces are actively destroying the enemy and not allowing them to build up their strength. This was reported by Yevhen Losichak, commander of the 7th Rapid Response Corps of the Air Assault Forces. The military notes that enemy units are constantly advancing, trying to seize the city and improve their tactical position. At the same time, the notional line of demarcation there still runs along the railway, and the northern part of the settlement is fully controlled by the Ukrainian armed forces.
Our forces have primarily focused on holding the northern part of the city in order to maintain a corridor from Mirnohrad. Mirnohrad serves as a kind of outpost in the east. In case the situation there becomes significantly more complicated, these units are obvious. The commander's decision should be to withdraw further west, strengthening the flanks of Pokrovsk's defense.
And while some defense force units are bravely fighting on the front line, others are not forgetting to strike at Russian rear positions. For example, just recently, GUR fighters struck the Kacha military airfield in Crimea. They managed to destroy a MiG-29 fighter jet, as well as the Irtysh airfield radar complex near temporarily occupied Simferopol.
It seems Ukraine has found a surefire formula for striking Crimea using heavy FP-2 drones, which, despite having an increased warhead weight of over 100 kilograms, are capable of reaching any point in the occupied territory where Starlink is operating, making it extremely difficult to suppress these drones with electronic warfare systems. So we can expect new footage from Primar soon.
Last night, Russian oil facilities also came under attack. In the Krasnodar region, local residents report hearing about 5 explosions near the city of Temryuk. Later, videos of the aftermath of these strikes appeared online. It became known that the largest port terminal in Temryuk was hit. It is likely that the strike targeted a gas reservoir.
the Temryuk port and the Syzran oil refinery were blown up. And while this oil refinery had already been hit before, the port of Temryuk, well, basically hadn't. Certainly not this year. Temryuk is an important logistical hub in the Sea of Azov for the Russian terrorist locusts. Essentially, it is a key export hub on Russia's southern coast. Located on the Taman Peninsula on the coast of the Sea of Azov, it holds strategic importance both for Russian logistics as a whole and for servicing external shipments, including those related to energy, agricultural products, and, very importantly, military cargo. In
fact, it was from here that the Russians transferred reserves of fuel and weapons to the Russian Federation's group, which has become more active in southern Ukraine in recent days.
Shock, an assassination attempt on Zelensky, an aerial battle near the presidential plane. The internet has already exploded with new details. And all of this happened against the backdrop of scandalous points of the peace plan that are being promoted in secret. Who is behind the assassination attempt? Coincidence or a carefully planned attack? All the hottest details.
Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity. Watch now to experience all the amazing details and discover what everyone is talking about. You won't regret it. 4 unidentified military-type drones violated the no-fly zone and flew over the sea toward the flight path of the plane carrying Volodymyr and Olena Zelensky.
This is to the point that Europe needs to realize that war is not just happening somewhere nearby. The war is already in Europe, directly in the countries of the European Union. And the attack on airspace, the restriction of European countries in the use of their own airspace because it could be blocked by Russian drones, this is still a reminder that this possibility should not be ruled out, including the possibility of seeking a military response to Russia's actions.
The presidents and the First Lady of Ukraine arrived in Ireland on the night of December 2nd. They were met by Prime Minister Michael Martin. The plane landed just a few minutes before the incident, although the drones did reach the location, where the Ukrainian commander-in-chief was supposed to fly through. Then the UAVs flew toward an Irish Navy vessel, which had been secretly deployed at sea for the Ukrainian president's visit. Irish security services consider what happened to be a hybrid attack. An investigation is currently underway. At the moment,
it seems to me that the Russian special services wanted to demonstrate their capabilities, including, let's say, the possibility of eliminating Zelensky, on the territory of the European Union, that we are capable of this. In other words, this is a very psychological move, a demonstration that we can do it, and that's it. On
Friday, December 5th, the meeting between representatives of the US and Ukraine concluded, during which the Ukrainian delegation, led by National Security and Defense Council Secretary Rustem Umerov, sought to find out exactly what issues the American intermediaries Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner discussed with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin at their recent meeting in Moscow.
The US is playing this game where essentially they are trying to protect the aggressor. At the same time, it is necessary to constantly remind the US at all such meetings like the one in Miami and others that, guys, there is the concept of international law, there is the concept of US domestic law, and there is a law passed in 2017 stating that America will never recognize any territories annexed by Russia from Ukraine. So when you say that you recognize Crimea, you are violating your own legislation.
Nevertheless, the national security strategy published by the White House declares that friendship with Russia is a priority for the US.
Any action that voters strongly dislike will lead to their defeat in the elections. Let me remind you, there is less than a year left until the elections in the US. On November 2nd, 2026, there will be elections for the House of Representatives and also for a third of the Senate. And here, first and foremost, it's the Republican politicians who understand that the recent, let's put it this way, drawing an analogy with Ukraine, the local elections on November 4th, 2000 showed a complete victory for the Democrats. Not because the Democrats were so good, but because it was a classic protest vote.
US Vice President Jay Divins believes that in the near future we can expect good news regarding the resolution of Russia's war against Ukraine. According to Vance, at this point the US has already made progress on this issue, but has not yet reached the finish line. The finish line.
America is constantly making concessions to Russia. Witkoff comes, listens to the world, and tells the Russians, look, we're ready to go, we're ready to do this and that, we're ready to recognize part of Donbass, we're ready to recognize Crimea, and so on and so forth. And instead of saying, okay, great, we need this, the Russians say, oh, listen, can you also do this, and can you do that too? And these concessions to the aggressor lead to the aggressor's appetite growing. And this can play both for and against you.
The Wall Street Journal, citing its sources, writes that European leaders are advising President Zelensky not to agree to Russia's demands without security guarantees from the United States. According to Spiegel, during the conversation, European leaders expressed concerns that the US might betray Ukraine on the issue of territory without providing clarity on security guarantees. Shock! Putin on his knees in India. A single question from a journalist shattered the entire plan of the bunker dweller. The video of the meeting with Modi blew up the internet. Putin's reputation collapsed completely before the eyes of the whole world. What exactly humiliated the dictator? What consequences await the Kremlin next? Watch!
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Problems with the West are forcing them to cling more tightly to old partners. Putin flew to India, a country he loves, only as much as he can profit from it.
Moscow is begging New Delhi to save the Russian market, and
to make the visit look even more grand, they put on an entire show for Putin, hysteria. Upon the Kremlin dictator's arrival, there was a red carpet. And a so-called cultural program right next to the plane. It's interesting. Who benefits more from this visit? Is it still Putin or India itself?
This is very beneficial for Putin because, first of all, it shows that he is not an outcast. Secondly, it's an attempt to show that they are actively working with those countries that are not the leading ones. Today there's the G7, but instead they are working with large economies and thinking about the future. I think this is the narrative that will be sold to Putin domestically.
But the height of absurdity was yet to come. An Indian TV channel showed a cartoon featuring Putin and the President of India, Modi, driving past oil rigs and singing a song about friendship. But you might wonder, what does oil have to do with it? The answer is very simple. India has reduced its purchases and now Putin will have to beg them to resume.
The issue isn't just about oil, but about major economic and trade partners for Russia who need to emerge in the absence of trade relations, for example, with the European Union, which are rapidly declining. Russian oil really does need to go somewhere, and all of this is extremely important for Putin today.
During the visit, all the grandeur, Putin maintained his composure right up until a local journalist asked him about Russian-speaking Ukrainians from the occupied Ukrainian cities, which cornered the Kremlin old man.
But they were also shocked. Like what? Putin is doing this to us. We are his people. Many of the women I spoke to were shocked. What can you say to the people in eastern Ukraine who actually have families in Russia, who regularly move back and forth between Russia and Ukraine? What would you say to them? I
didn't understand the question. Shocked by what?
It seems that people in Russia have stopped being squeamish about Indian imports, since one of the reasons for the bunker dwellers' visit is precisely to increase purchases of Indian goods.
Contacts with India are much more preferable than contacts with China, surprising as it may seem, because firstly, in Russia there is a great fear of Chinese expansion. In the Far East in general, there is a very negative attitude toward the Chinese, such deep contacts. But India, on the other hand, has been experiencing significant growth.
Would like to get a couple of fighter jets and air defense systems from Russia. Although it would seem that for Russia itself, this wouldn't be unnecessary either.
Not superfluous at all.
Russia, in turn, also promised to ensure uninterrupted fuel supplies. I wonder, does Russia itself have enough?
No need to worry about their own people. Their own stay silent, and for now Putin thinks that his own won't really raise their voices. For some reason Putin is sure of this today. I wouldn't be so sure if I were in his place. Well, Putin thinks he can shut his own people up, but India, as a partner, it is very important today.
But the most remarkable thing about Putin's visit is what is not visible. Propaganda. Russia has agreed to launch an Indian bureau for Russia today. But why would that be?
This propaganda works very, very well. And in this sense, I think they will stoke anti-American sentiment. They will stoke anti-European sentiment for us. And I would draw attention to an article by Alexander Stubb, which was recently published, where he writes that the main global battleground will unfold precisely in the countries of the global south. In
the context of international isolation and sanctions pressure, Moscow demonstratively emphasizes its closeness with India, calling it almost the most powerful power. Anything at all as long as they agree. And
we need military cooperation, military technical cooperation to develop, because India is a truly powerful and influential state, a significant center of global power and strategic importance in the Asian region. And for us, it is important to build close, tight, and mutually beneficial relations with them.
Also, even before Putin's visit, Russia and India resolved a decade-old issue. Delhi agreed to lease a nuclear submarine from Moscow for $2 billion for 10 years.
It seems to me that the main point here is that we recently witnessed an escalation of the armed conflict between India and Pakistan. And in fact, things weren't going too well for India there. I think that the issue of armaments is quite important for India. I don't know who made concessions to whom, but apparently they really do need the submarine as well.
No matter how friendly relations with India may seem, sanctions and Russia's isolation force Putin to do everything possible not to lose even such partners.
Incredible. Belarus exposed Lukashenko in a new scandal. Minsk carried out a bloody crackdown. Putin's secret drone center is being funded directly through a Belarusian factory. The factory doesn't just supply the occupiers, it has become a bridge for bypassing sanctions for the largest Russian UAV manufacturer. And that's not all. One crucial detail has shocked the entire world. All the sensational details are in the report.
Pots, trays, garbage containers, and wheel stop systems. These are the products of the Gomel plant Santex that you can see on display. But under the table, Belarusians are also trading drones, and quite successfully. Santex got caught with its underground production in June of this year. Amid the posts about kitchenware, this one appeared about a quadcopter with a thermal imaging camera called Pioneer. The publication has now been removed from the website, but it was thanks to it that journalists were able to unravel the thread that led to the most powerful secret drone technology center in the Russian army, Rubicon.
Wherever they are stationed, wherever they operate, I don't envy our units.
The main combat drone of Rubicon is the VT-40 Kamikaze UAV, also known as Sudoplatov. This is the most widely produced drone, manufactured by the Russian company Rustakt as part of the Judgment Day project. Currently, the manufacturer is under sanctions from Switzerland and the European Union. A few months before being added to the blacklist, Rustakt was headed by Pavel Nikitin from Belarus. He moved to Russia in the 2000s and now owns several companies that fulfill contracts for law enforcement agencies as well as the Russian defense industry. But as journalists have discovered, Nikitin has not severed ties with his homeland either, although he renounced his Belarusian citizenship in 2010.
Here, together with his relatives, he owns or manages at least 4 companies. One of them is the Santex plant. Through his Belarusian company, Nikitin supplies Rustakt with Western components from the Czech Republic, Italy, Poland, and the USA. Moreover, these deliveries took place after the sanctions were imposed.
Journalists also got hold of documents for shipments of goods that are not described in any way. By the way, similar invoices with completely undescribed goods were sent to the Russian Rustakt from China, amounting to millions of dollars.
The same kind of undescribed equipment is also supplied to Rustakt by the Gomel-based cookware manufacturer, the Santex plant. In documents from a source in the tax service, we found 135 payments totaling more than 14 billion Russian rubles. That's over $152 million. BRC has not yet been able to determine exactly what kind of equipment the Santex plant is selling to Rustakt. And
journalists have confirmed deliveries of drones from the world-famous company DJI, which are banned for sale in Russia. According to their information, the Belarusian plant, which officially displays pots and basins in its store windows, re-exported DJI drones worth $2 million to Russia from 2022 to 2023. In total, according to calculations by the Belarusian Investigative Center, 14 Belarusian companies are helping Russians kill Ukrainians and go on safaris against them. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, they have supplied 20,000 drones worth $34 million. And naturally, these figures are far from reflecting the real scale of assistance to Russia's military aggression.
Shocking. Russia has plunged into the depths of catastrophe. After returning from the war, former convicts have taken over the streets. The country is drowning in chaos. Serious crimes committed by gangs have increased by a third in just 1 year. What kind of hell is happening on the streets of Russia, and where will it lead? The whole truth is in the report.
In the first 10 months of 2025, about 44,000 serious crimes committed by organized groups were registered in Russia. That's an increase of almost a third.
I think, yes, the time of heroes has come, and that's wonderful.
The true, genuine elite are all those who serve Russia. Workers and warriors. In
fact, it's an impressive achievement. The background to the increase is well known. The return of combatants, including those who before the war had spent time in, let's say, not-so-distant places.
All of us were already marked on the shore, as it were, that returning to society and returning from the special military operation zone is undesirable.
However, the media keeps surfacing horrifying stories.
They were offered a chance at some kind of redemption. It's a nice-sounding phrase, although in practice not everyone is reformed. On the contrary, many are only made worse.
The repeat offender Azamat Iskaliev was sentenced for the brutal murder of his girlfriend.
This is footage from a surveillance camera, the main piece of evidence of the particular cruelty in this shocking criminal case. In the frame is now Azamat Iskaliev, who has already been convicted 3 times. When
he turned around, I pulled out the pen I had taken out and followed him.
Soldiers who had been through the war returned to Russian cities without psychological support, without any mechanism that would allow them to adapt to so-called peaceful life. Once home, many chose the environment where the rules were clear and familiar. Organized crime accepts such people without unnecessary questions. Combat experience, discipline, and a lack of fear of violence. In fact, all of this turned out to be a valuable resource. However, apparently this valuable resource is not just for organized crime groups.
It is precisely from these people we must, in the future, form the country's elite from them, the true elite of the country to whom Russia can be entrusted. We need to form this group from these people.
As a result, criminal organizations have not only strengthened in recent times, but have also renewed their ranks. In some regions, new groups have emerged that operate noticeably more efficiently than the previous ones.
In the Rostov region, a tow truck driver was convicted for brutally murdering an 8-year-old girl. A year ago, he offered the trusting schoolgirl a ride. Sometime later, her body showing signs of violence was found in the forest. The guides left her.
Did you exactly strangle her, the victim, during the alleged rape?
So you were already strangling her during the rape?
Her? Yes.
Against the backdrop of the current situation, the Ministry of Internal Affairs is recording an increase in violence, armed attacks, conflicts between organized crime groups, and crimes committed by people with combat experience. However, the current rise in crime in Russia is not just a side effect of the war. This is the result of a specific decision to send to the front people whom society once tried to isolate.
From the very beginning, we raised the issue with the administration that you can't just put the Sinitsas out in public. The town is small. People remember that murder. We all lived here back then. We were afraid to go outside.
Judging by the trends, the crime rate is unlikely to decrease. Those who have returned have no tools for peaceful living. The state has no effective support programs. The irony is that all these processes seem surprisingly predictable.
That's all for now. For more hot news from the front, tune in to our next episode.